and welcome to Current Affairs for Beginners. In our yesterday's video, we have seen some of the questions related to this Bhakti movement and Sufism. Among the following, who was not a proponent of Bhakti cult? Here the answer is A. It is Nagarjuna. The next question is, with references to the religious history of medieval India, the Sufi mystics were known to pursue which of the following practices? Meditation and control of breath, severe ascetic exercises in a lonely place, recitation of holy songs to arouse a state of ecstasy in their audience. The answer here is D. All of them are correct. The next question is, consider the following Bhakti saints: Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak, Tyagaraja. Who among the above was or were preaching when the Lodi dynasty fell and Babur took over? The answer here is B. Only Guru Nanak. The next question is, it indicates the average change in the prices of commodities at the retail level and it measures inflation at the final stage of transaction. Which of the following refers to the above? The answer is Consumer Price Index. It is D. So now let's start today's session. These are all the topics that we are going to cover in our today's video. The first one is investment over subsidies. This article comes under GS paper 2 under the topic of governance. From this article, now we are going to see about a concept known as universal basic income. What is meant by this universal basic income? It is a minimum level of income. Minimum level of income guaranteed by the government of any country to its citizens. By the government to its citizens. What is this? It is a financial support given by the government to its people so that they don't have to struggle for their basic needs like food, shelter, etc. In our India's context, in the economic survey for the year 2016 and 17 has an entire chapter that is dedicated to this universal basic income. There it was mentioned this universal basic income is a periodic unconditional cash transfer to every citizen in the country. Here, social or economic positions of the individual are not taken into consideration while giving those benefits. That is the unconditional cash transfer. This concept of universal basic income has three main features. They are, it is universal in nature. That means there are no targeted beneficiaries. Everybody, every citizen in the country can avail these benefits. Next, the second feature is cash transfer instead of in-kind transfer, because here the benefit is in the form of cash but not in-kind. The next feature is this universal basic income is unconditional. That means one need not prove his or her unemployment status or socio-economic identity to be eligible for availing this universal basic income. What could be the benefits if this is implemented? As a form of social security, this universal basic income will help in reducing the inequality and eliminating the poverty so that it ensures security and dignity for all the individuals. And here the human labor is being substituted by technology so that there will be a reduced wage income and reduced purchasing power. These can be compensated by this universal basic income. The next article is Think Differently About Healthcare. This article comes under GS paper 2 under the topic of governance, and here the subtopic is issues related to health. From this article, now we are going to see about a scheme that was mentioned in this article. It is the Ayushman Bharat program. What is this Ayushman Bharat? It is an attempt to move away from sectoral and segmented approach for delivering health services into a comprehensive need-based healthcare services. Under this project, this Ayushman Bharat aims to address the health care holistically, that is, by covering prevention, promotion and ambulatory care at primary, secondary and tertiary level. So it's like an umbrella program which covers the health care or hospitalization for primary, secondary and tertiary level. And this program has two components to deal with these three. One is health and wellness centers, which will bring health care closer to the homes of the people. These centers will provide primary health care covering both maternal and child health services and non-communicable diseases, including free essential drugs and diagnostic services. And the second component under this Ayushman Bharat is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. This program will focus on secondary and tertiary hospitalization. This program will provide health protection cover to poor and vulnerable families. As we said that it is going to provide health protection by giving financial protection. That means it is going to reduce the financial burden upon 10.74 crore poor, deprived rural families and identified occupational categories of urban workers' families, and these beneficiaries will be considered based on the socio-economic and caste census data. This program will provide a benefit cover of 5 lakh rupees per family per year to address these secondary and tertiary hospitalization in all the government hospitals and empaneled private hospitals in the country. The next article is No IB report on private institutes says center. This article comes under GS paper 2 under the topic of governance, and here the subtopic is education. From this article, now we are going to see about Institute of Eminence status. What is meant by this Institute of Eminence status? This scheme of Institute of Eminence was rolled out by the University Grants Commission in order to help the higher education, especially 20 higher education institutes from the country, to enter into 500 global rankings in 10 years and then eventually break into top 100 institutions over the time. So what would be the benefits for these institutions? The selected institutions will have greater autonomy, independence compared to other higher educational institutions, and they will be free to decide their fee for domestic and foreign students, and they have the flexibility for course duration and structure. They will be exempted from approvals of government or UGC, that is the University Grants Commission, for academic collaborations with foreign institutions, except the institutions that are in the negative list of this Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Home Affairs list of negative countries. And here I have told that in order to rank up 20 higher educational institutions, out of this 10 are public and 10 are private higher educational institutions, and to get place only the higher educational institutions that were placed in top 500 global rankings or top 50 of the National Institutional Ranking Framework are eligible to apply for this Eminence tag. Some of the institutions like Joe Institute by Reliance Foundation, BITS Pilani, Manipal Academy for Higher Education, all these have got this Eminence tag. The primary objective to establish these institutes of eminence in India is to set up these higher educational institutions that would become world-class teaching as well as research institutes. The next article is Bank of India's net NPA drops below 6%. We know what is meant by this NPA. It is non-performing assets. This article comes under GS paper 3 under the topic of economy and the subtopic is banking. From this article, now we are going to see about this prompt corrective action framework, which we have seen in our previous videos so many times. Now we'll see it again in brief. What is this PCA? Prompt corrective action framework. These are the norms, that are the rules that will allow the regulator. Who is the regulator here for the banks? It is Reserve Bank of India, to place certain restrictions like stopping the branch expansion and stopping the dividend payments by the bank. It can even put a limit to the bank's lending limit to one entity, particular one entity or a sector. Other corrective actions that can be imposed on banks include like special audits, restructuring operations and activation of recovery plan. Banks promoters can also be asked to bring in new management. There is a possibility of bringing in new management also. All these will be done by the bank. When the bank's financial conditions of the banks get worsened below certain limits. They are also known as threshold points or trigger points. What are those limits? See, there are 4 parameters based on which this prompt corrective action framework, that means the restrictions by the regulator on the bank, will be invoked. They are capital to risk weighted asset ratio, and the other one is net non-performing assets, and the other one is return on assets, which means the profit, and the other one is leverage ratio. The RBI has set up some limits for all these 4 parameters. If those limits were crossed by the banks, then this PCA will be invoked. So we can say that these trigger points are to assess, monitor and control and to take corrective actions on the banks which are weak and troubled. Now let's see a prelims question on it. Try to answer this. Based on which of the following parameters the prompt corrective action framework is invoked on banks? The next article is Mukund Rajan to head new $1 billion ESG fund. This article comes under GS paper 3 under the topic of economy. From this article, now we are going to see what is meant by this ESG fund. E stands for environmental, S for social and Z for governance. These 3 are a set of criteria or a set of standards for a company's operations that will let the investors to screen the potentiality of their investment. The investor will consider these 3 criteria while investing. So this environmental criteria will look at how a company is performing, and this social criteria examines how a company manages its relationships with its employees, suppliers, customers and communities where it operates. Whereas this governance criteria deals with a company's leadership, how they are auditing, internal controls, shareholders' rights. Based on this governance criteria will be seen. So now we are seeing about this ESG funds. Now we have seen what does they mean, ESG, and based on these criteria only investors will invest the money in a company. Now these ESG funds are the portfolios of equities or bonds. These are the bonds for which this environmental, social and governance factors were integrated in this investment process. That means this equities and bonds that were contained in this ESG fund have passed many critical tests over how sustainable the company or the government is regarding its ESG criteria. This ESG investing is also called as sustainable investing or responsible investing or impact investing or socially responsible investing. Here we said that the investors will invest their money based on these criteria, because these criteria will only tell how sustainable is the company and our potential of our investment. So here in this ESG fund should contain only the securities that were having higher sustainability score, and it will exclude the companies with poor records. For example, the companies with poor records on pollution in case of environmental factors and labor relations in case of social factor. It will also exclude the sovereign bonds of governments with similar poor records. If even the government bonds were having poor records, they will even exclude. The next article is Non-Communicable Diseases Top Killers in Southeast Asia, World Health Organization. This article comes under GS paper 3 under the topic of science. From this article now you will see what is meant by this non-communicable diseases. We know that diseases can be classified based on some criteria. Based on the duration, diseases were, they're classified into two types. One is acute and chronic diseases. Acute diseases are the ones which occurs for a short interval of time, like common cold, like small burns, all this. Whereas chronic diseases is a disease that lasts for a long period of time, like heart diseases and kidney diseases. And these acute diseases, if they were not treated properly, they can eventually become a chronic disease. Whereas based on communicability of the disease, the diseases are categorized into two types. One is communicable disease and the other one is non-communicable. This communicable were also known as infectious diseases and the other one is non-infectious diseases. So from this we can say that these non-communicable diseases are the diseases that are related to stress, ignorance of healthy diet and proper habits. Some of the examples that were related to these characters were like some cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, all this. In India, the Indian government has launched a population-based prevention, screening and control program for 5 common non-communicable diseases like hypertension, diabetes, cancers of oral cavity, breast and cervix. So dear students, this is our Law Excellence website where you can access the notes for this video, and this is our official Telegram channel where you can access all other videos and material of Law Excellence. Thank you.